Good morning, everyone. We're going to call the Elyria Planning Commission of January 7th, 2025 to order. Mr. Aden, Mr. Battle, Mr. Hubbard, Mr. Odurko.
Here.
Director Panowski. Here. Mayor Brubaker here. Mr. Tedrow.
Here.
With that being said, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of December 3rd, 2024 as distributed. Moved by Mr. Panowski.
Second.
Second by Mr. Odurko. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 4, there is no miscellaneous correspondence. 5, no new business, no old business. We have 2 public hearings this morning. The first one is 2024-100182, 525 Mussey Avenue, LLC, 7716 Depot Road, Lisbon, Ohio, 44432, for 525 Mussey Avenue, Elyria, Ohio, 44035. Request for conditional use per information submitted with the application. Are there any proponents? There's a proponent. Yep. Come on up. Yep. And then to the microphone there, and please state your name and address for the record. Mayor, if you want to make sure it's on. Don? Okay, thank you.
My name is Mike Stepik, S-T-E-P as in Paul, I-C, with Rubber City Engineering and Environmental in Akron, Ohio.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Never done one of these things before, so bear with me.
You're all right. Take your time.
Made the submittal, and thank you, by the way, for Mr. Schoenig, Mr. Farkas, and Mary Tomsky's help and assistance and responsiveness to assisting me on putting the package together. We're looking for a special use zoning change as well as a conditional use approval. 525 Mussey, who is the owner, wishes to do a variety of businesses at the property, and right now, just by definition of the zoning code, working with Mr. Farkas, it was suggested that we needed to make the recommended or the suggested approval request to your board.
Okay. Before we get any more, let's get some reports from our departments. Mr. Farkas, Building Department.
Mr. Chair, through you, just for a point of order, the request, or out of order, the rezoning should be heard first and then the conditional use based on the submittal. In regards to the report, as Mr. Schoening is taking over the responsibilities of zoning, but that hasn't yet taken place, I'm going to defer to him for the report, but we'll be here for questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
And let's back up. And for the record, Ms. Tomsky, please document that Mr. Battle is here. We will back up. The first public hearing will be the zoning, so we'll speak specifically to the rezoning request, which is public hearing 2024-100183, 525 Mussey Ave, LLC, 7716 Depot Road, Lisbon, Ohio, 44432, for 525 Mussey Avenue, Elyria. And this request is for the rezone from HI Heavy Industrial to SI Special Industrial. Mr. Schoening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. The properties that we are looking at here are 0624-007-107-005, 16-24-118-000-009, 0624-008-105-008, 0624-117-000-004, and 06-24-009-108-011. The applicant is requesting the above listed parcels to be rezoned to a special industrial district. Currently, these properties are listed as heavy industrial, with the exception of one parcel, 0624-009-108-011, that is located in the northwest of the site, that currently lacks a zoning classification per our current zoning map, and the other parcels, as indicated, are heavy industrial. The intent, as indicated by the applicant, is to develop the properties into a business hub that may include a variety of business operations to stimulate economic growth and employment on otherwise vacant industrial properties. The proposed use listed by the applicant include vehicle storage, repair. Further clarification we would need from the applicant to determine the intensity of the repair that is proposed for this facility, maintenance, general manufacturing and warehousing, material processing, recycling. This can include metal, wood, vinyl, plastics, and et cetera, as indicated by the applicant, from construction and demolition debris. This rezoning proposal was routed to several city departments. They included the building department, Mr. Farkas, engineering, Mr. John Schneider, fire marshal, William Gall, and as well as wastewater and water departments. Several comments were received by these departments. That is indicated in the report. That is, of course, been submitted to all of you. As indicated, the 4 uses are varying intensities. To get to the point, essentially, wastewater department would prohibit any discharges from many of the processes that were listed, any ancillary processes, since we have absolutely no control over the source of these liquid wastes. In short, would be concern of public health. Purpose of the zoning code, of course, is to promote public health, as stated in section 1123.01. Additionally, the applicant wishes to create non-conforming uses on this site as per section 1123.05 of the Elyria Codified Ordinances. Any use not permitted as principally permitted use, permitted accessory use, or conditionally permitted use in any zoning district shall be prohibited in that zoning district. Overall, due to the varying degrees of intensities of the proposed industrial uses, yet to be identified uses, as indicated earlier, the creation of non-conforming uses on this site within the proposal, and concerns for public health and welfare for the city, we do recommend disapproval of this application for the rezoning as well as the conditional use.
Thank you, Mr. Schoening. Any comments from engineering? Any comments from Assistant Chief Gall?
No comments.
Any additional comments from wastewater? Are there any questions or comments from the panel? And for the record, Ms. Tomsky and Mr. Aiden is also here. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Yeah, I think I'd like to, if I can get an understanding from the proponent, what is it that you're trying to do that you're not underneath the current, where it's at currently, are you not able to do?
I may get this wrong. I'm not a master of the zoning code as Mr. Farkas is, so if I do something, I'm sure I'll clarify. There was for the special use classification, it was specifically, I believe, the recycling operations, the construction, demolition, debris recycling operation, since we're on the topic of the change in zoning. The conditional use approval, I think, covered some of the other areas. Basically, we're, from a consulting standpoint, I'm seeing this a lot across the state. About 2-3 years ago, the Ohio EPA instituted a program of C&D processing, which included recycling and transfer of materials. And there's about 30 sites across the state now that are permitted by Ohio EPA for the, basically it's a roll-off businesses in that they'll reconsolidate their loads. They'll also pull out the metals and the recyclable materials such as the wood. In some cases, even more materials will be pulled out, such as shingles and that. They're all permitted by Ohio EPA, but I'm seeing a lot more of this now in Ohio where it was big in the West Coast and East Coast. I mean, a lot of that has to do with higher prices on everything. The landfills are charging minimums for the roll-off containers, so they want to reconsolidate those loads. And also with the lack of CDL drivers and higher fuel prices, there's a lot more companies that are going more to the recycling side, trying to pull out those materials and make it a little bit more efficient economic situation. So I work for about 20 of those 30 sites across the state now. So just to give you a little bit of perspective on that. And I find this in a couple of cases where these kind of operations just weren't ever thought of when zoning code was initially developed. Really, Ohio and the Midwest was never a big construction, demolition, debris, or waste recycling area in the United States. That's why Rumpke Waste Management, Kimball are all going to these large material recovery facility operations now for their recyclables.
I got you. Thank you.
I have a couple questions and concerns here. With this special industrial district, it specifically says here, accommodates a broad range of industrial uses with high nuisance characteristics, allowing these uses to operate without adversely affecting nearby uses and activities. And when I drove around there and I looked at the map, I have huge concerns that we already have a Superfund site issue right behind where this property is. We have numerous residentials, we have a river, and less than, by the way, a crow flies, less than a half a mile, we have a elementary school. And when you look at some of these things that can be conditionally permitted, I have huge concerns about what potentially could end up in there with what is in the surrounding area. It was questioned in here in regards to the vehicle repair, that further clarification needed to be received from the applicant. Do you have any further information on that side of it?
For the intensity of the repair, I don't, I have to admit, that's a new phrase for me, so if I could get a little bit better clarification of what they're looking for intensity of repair. That's the first I heard of the comment. Myself or the applicant, we can do the best we can to try to clarify that while we're here.
Okay. Mr. Farkas, Ms. Schoen, can you clarify that?
Mr. Chair, through you, I can respond to that as this request came in last year with the same verbiage, and I can read my response that I did back then, which is similar to what it would be now. The request came in as vehicle storage, repair, and maintenance, specifically then for buses with no salvage or junkyard of the vehicles. I indicated the repair and maintenance best fits an automotive repair and services category located in the codified ordinance definition section 112507, copy herein. Unfortunately, the proposed use vehicle repair and maintenance is not listed as a permitted or conditionally permitted use per section 116602 through 116604 of the codified ordinance. From the information provided then, the proposed use best fits a business automotive-oriented district or a light industrial district that would permit either outright. So we had asked clarity, as Chris and I had worked on the memo together, we had asked, is this still the same game plan? Are they still going to be using this for bus salvage and et cetera? It just says on the request received, vehicle storage, repair, and maintenance. That's all we have.
Okay. Back to the proponent.
Well, I think the idea is to be able to allow those sorts of activities. I believe at one time the applicant had a potential business opportunity for bus repair and maintenance at the facility. I don't know if that still opportunity doesn't exist at this point, but really wanted to include that in the request, so should that opportunity arise again, did the best I could in the response. Again, proposed best fits the business auto-oriented district, BAO, or the light industry. My understanding, again, fairly, limited understanding of this would be that if we're asking for special industry or we're already a heavy industry, that anything that would be approved under the light industry or the other would fall under that umbrella. I could be wrong. For your, as for the concerns, I understand where what you're speaking to in terms of the location of the facility and the other concerns. My first and best answer would be that any of the proposed operations, such as the C&D recycling operation or the waste transfer, are all required to go through a permitting process with Ohio EPA. They do have stipulated setback and siting criteria requirements for that. So there is a permitting process. They would also be inspected by the local health department and Ohio EPA on a regular basis, to prevent any egregious operations. And they're also required under Ohio EPA to maintain a financial assurance funding based on a worst-case scenario for any sort of cleanup of those materials. And again, this is a program that's been in now about 2 years in process with Ohio EPA, and there's 30 sites across the state. And it's a third-party financial assurance, so Ohio EPA controls that funding.
Director?
Thank you. Through you, you'd mentioned that you yourself, I think you're a consultant here for the owner, who's also, I think, is here in the crowd. You've worked with a number of sites across the state as a consultant.
sir.
Right. Does this owner, this particular property owner, have another one of these sites anywhere that we could look at his past performance as it relates to potential EPA issues that might give us some confidence?
The operator runs a number of different types of facilities, but no, not currently don't have a C&D processing license or permit for their operation, but I could easily put you in touch with a number of facilities or the Ohio EPA C&D contacts, construction demolition debris contacts. Sorry, I live in a world of acronyms.
Sure.
For further information.
Sure. I mean, if this owner had other facilities and had a good track record, that might ease some of the concerns, was my only point.
Understood.
And then,
It is
how
a-
often, I'm sorry, how often is the EPA, you talked about regular inspections and the license renewals and that kind of stuff. How often is that an annual thing, the license renewal, so they'd be there at minimum then?
So you get a permit, it's kind of like a permit to install, which is kind of like a building permit. Then you get a license to operate. The license to operate is annual, and it's renewed annually. They have to, submit for the renewal. The Lorain County Health Department would be the inspecting, because they're approved by Ohio EPA for their program. When they start off the operation, their inspections would be biweekly for, I believe, it's the first 90 days, and then I think it goes to monthly. And Ohio EPA would do a quarterly overview of that inspection program as well. Lorain County Health Department, inspects Pearl Avenue, C&D, and Lorain, I can't think right now, Republic's site as well. So it would be all under their solid waste program.
Yeah, thank you.
Through the chair, Mr. Derricott with the wastewater department was able to provide us some comments. Would it be acceptable for him to take the podium to take further questions?
Mr. Derricott, please state your name and address for the record.
Shane Derricott, one of the assistant superintendents in charge of industrial commercial 1194 Gulf Road. This has been, Darryl, I don't know, a 3-year kind of going back and forth with Mr. Stepik and the interested parties. And just to give a little brief history, previous administration, they were proposing what we call a CWT. That's a centralized waste treatment facility, which back in the Corzan days would bring hauled waste to this facility. They would treat it and then discharge it to our sewers. Well, that proposal, if something would go wrong, it would totally wipe out our wastewater treatment facility. So that was denied. And then some time has gone by where this proposal, the past 2 years, this proposal has been more of a, where it's confined, no discharge would be leaving the facility. And we still have concerns, and he mentioned the public health department. I myself would most likely be out there, the city, monthly, weekly, if not more, just because we have concerns the river's so close to this area. You mentioned non-hazardous waste, but things happen and things slip through. So we would be there weekly, monthly, doing inspections on our part. But Chris, is there anything else you want me to more define? Or
One more question. Exhibit C, or rather Appendix C, our topography map that I've included in this report, would you say there's any concerns regarding the overall topography of that site in relation to the Superfund site? I mean, from what I can see, the elevations indicate 731 feet. And there is a decline towards the pond, if you will, on that Superfund site. Would you be able to clarify a little bit more as to any concerns that wastewater might have?
Yeah, that, on page 8, ending in 008, I believe that back part of the building is less than 100 feet from where the pond would reach. So again, just part of the city and what we already do, we would be there and we would have concerns for stormwater. You know, the ditch, we've sampled it, and, you know, we're pretty confident 10 to 20 feet is safe, is clean, it's, you know, but anything deeper, you know, we're not confident in, and if a hazardous waste possibly could touch that site, you don't know. You don't know what could react or what could happen. So, yeah, about less than 100 feet from that back building.
Any questions for Mr. Darcott? Thank you, Mr. Darcott. Are there any further questions from the committee? Mr. Aden?
It doesn't seem like this is a very appropriate and a very safe place to be installing something like this. Seems like it's a very nice and a great idea, but maybe not that close to the water. And we already learned our lesson from the pond, right? From the, you know, that's just my opinion.
Yes, sir. Yes, this is the proponent time, so speak to it. Yes, sir.
Mike Stepik. Good comments, I appreciate them. Yeah, we had originally, the idea was to permit the centralized wastewater treatment facility. Once we'd gotten involved with that and the city's concerns, we, you know, pulled out of that idea. Right now, under any of the proposed operations, there aren't any proposed discharge connections for industrial wastewaters. There might be some domestic connections for bathrooms and things like that. All things we could coordinate with wastewater. Welcome the inspections, you know, more frequent inspections, building the relationship, you know, is what I always tell my clients, is build those relationships and get a good reputation of working together. And then for the, again, going back to the other uses, there would be at least an industrial general stormwater permit requirement for the facility and a stormwater pollution prevention plan document requiring regular trainings, inspections, and coordination with wastewater. And that's something we could easily coordinate, you know, to get your review and input on as well. And I think, you know, I can't directly speak for the applicant, but if there was a concern specific to the rear building or the northernmost building, I'm sure we could talk to you about what limited operations there may be at that particular structure, or a buffer zone from the pond, or any other, you know, conditions or requirements, you know, you might want to work out associated with the operation of the facility. Nothing's off the table for those kind of items. I understand the concerns of the board and the comments. I just wanted to provide a little clarity on that.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Anderko.
Just in general, if the conditional use and the rezone was approved, what would the next step be? Can we just, for this property, like, what would it look like after that in terms of, you know, access for them and to do what they want to do?
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Ondanko. If the rezoning was granted, and then we move to the next phase of the conditional use would specify what they're going to do. Those are some of the questions that Chris and I still have pending of, we're not 100% sure, though they do somewhat spell it out in their proposal. The next step would be, if it was approved and clean, it would go to the building department for actual plan submittal indicating the areas of building to be utilized, a potential change in use of the building from factory to maybe storage of materials and processing. It would evoke another step, which would trigger fire department, myself, maybe even some engineering.
And just for clarification, Mr. Anderko, if it were to pass out of here, it would go to city council for both the rezoning, which would require 3 readings, and then council would have to also approve any conditional use permits. Mr. Panowski?
Thank you. Daryl or Chris, it seems, so we have a report. You guys created a report for us, and I think Chris referenced it and read from some of that. And it talks about the recommendation is the disapproval of both the rezoning and the conditional use requests. But also, through this conversation, it appears to me that maybe you have some unanswered questions, some information that maybe, whether there's a lack of clarity because of a change from the last proposed and presented potential use, or maybe the application didn't include. Is there some information, if you had that might sway or change your recommendation? I mean, or is your recommendation solid regardless of some of the things that might have been mentioned here today? And I'm not trying to get you to change your recommendation, but if there's further conversation that might change your position on some of those things, that might be helpful to know.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Pianowski, due to the request being multifold, it is not singular to the recycling processing. They want to add repair maintenance, they want to do some storage, they want to do a multitude of requests and bundle into this specific special industrial category. Unfortunately, from a zoning perspective, you're talking about many different types of uses that aren't permitted in the special industrial district that, if approved, would automatically create a non-conforming use for the site until lifted. So we are opposed, at least I am from the zoning administrator, to say it is not recommended to approve based on that. If the request was singular to one use, it may be a different story, contingent we had knowledge of what that specific use is. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Are there any other proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Come up to the microphone, sir. Yes, sir. And state your name and address for the record, please.
But I'm not happy with, I live close to that, and that's a major environmental area right there. I'm concerned about that, the wildlife, the creek, all that stuff in that neighborhood there. I mean, y'all really need to think about this before you just pass it. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other opponents? Any other opponents? Any opponents? Okay. So we have, the first public hearing here is for the rezoning, and I'll reread that. It's 2024-100183, 525 Mussey Ave, LLC, 7716 Depot Road, Lisbon, Ohio, 44432, for 525 Mussey Avenue, Elyria, Ohio, 44435, requesting for a rezone from HI Heavy Industrial to SI Special Industrial. Do I have a motion to approve? That's up to you. It dies. Okay. Is there a motion to approve? So at this juncture, there is no motion to approve. There is no second, so we cannot take a vote on this. I will go ahead and table this until the next meeting. If there's any additional information the proponent would like to get to Mr. Schoening and Mr. Farkas, we'll give that opportunity, and then we'll reconvene on this at the next meeting in February. Because we weren't able to do the rezoning, there will be no vote on the conditional use permit. That will also get tabled until the next meeting. Next item on the agenda is item number 8, Planning Commission cases. We have one for 2024-1001176, Brilliant Electric Sign Company for 120 East Avenue, Elyria, Ohio, 4435, requesting a waiver of the design review guidelines for signage. Mr. Schoening, Ms. Scott? Who's going to take that one? Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. The proposed face replacement for the monument sign, as indicated by the plans provided, is internally illuminated with a white background. This is not permitted per our design review guidelines. To give context to this, white background signs have been previously approved by Planning Commission, recommended approval by Planning Commission for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything from Mr. Schneider? Fire Department?
No.
Any questions for the committee? The proponent?
Yeah, hi, I'm John Benedict with Brilliant Electric Sign Company. representing Rivian on these sign face replacements. So what we're doing is basically just changing the graphics on the signage. We're basically like for like, except for the fact that it's a different name and image, but same background color. So it's not going to look really much different from the existing.
Is there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve 2024-1001176. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Aderico, second by Mr. Panowski. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Item number 9, the summary reports for design review applications as presented. And number 10, the staff and commission reports as detailed there. Are there any questions on that? All right, our next meeting will be February 4, 2025. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Panowski, second by Mr. Aden. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
The one guy, he keep on trying to put everything in the same one. He keep on rejecting it, so.
Yeah, so I was really involved in that first divisional area. Keys was a mayor,